Warning: spoilers ahead for The Rings of Power Episode 4. The Rings of Power Episode 4 concludes in suitably epic fashion, with new alliances and new enemies. Here's the ending explained in full. Take a Moria deep dive into The Lord of the Rings. The Rings of Power Episode 4's game-changing ending. Amazon's The Rings of Power has burned slowly with its opening 3 episodes. Galadriel rejected the paradise of Valinor and accidentally landed in Numenor with Halbrand. Convinced Sauron's return is imminent, Elrond reconnected with Durin and khazad-dûm, but didn't realize his old pal was hiding a shiny secret. Arondir, meanwhile, found himself captured by orcs following Adar's invasion of the southlands, the surviving villagers gathering in the now-abandoned elven watchtower. The Rings of Power Episode 4 sees Morfydd Clark's Galadriel make a passionate plea to her Númenórean captors for assistance hunting down Sauron's forces, only to be given the cold shoulder by Cynthia Addai-Robinson's Queen Regent Miriel and Tristan Gravel's Chancellor Pharazôn. Across the sea, Durin finally tells Elrond the truth about Mithril, a brand new mineral Moria's dwarves have discovered in their mountain. Tyro Muaphidon's Theo then gets more than he bargained for during a supply run back to Turharad, and surely would have been killed were it not for the archery skills of soon-to-be stepdad Arondir, who arrives carrying a message from the Rings of Power Season 1's Big Bad. Why Miriel joins forces with Galadriel. When the Rings of Power Episode 4 begins, Queen Regent Miriel has precisely zero interest in hearing Galadriel's call for aid, preferring to either throw her in jail or send her back home as quickly as possible. By the final scene, however, Miriel is putting together an expedition that'll follow Galadriel to Middle-earth and help deliver the Southlands from Adar's orcs. Miriel's softening process toward Galadriel happens in 2 stages across the Rings of Power's The Great Wave episode. First, Númenor's Queen Regent and her rebellious guest bond over common trauma. Just as Galadriel is burdened by knowing Sauron is alive without any help from her fellow elves, Miriel shoulders the vision of her island's destruction and the pain of watching her father gradually fade away. What really seals the alliance between Galadriel and Númenor, however, is the falling blossoms of Nimloth, as Galadriel is sent packing back to Middle-earth alone. Nimloth, Númenor's white tree, begins shedding its leaves, apparently a rare event. This tree is a distant descendant of a similar version once planted in Valinor, and as the Rings of Power's voiceover explains, those faithful to the old traditions believe its leaves falling is akin to the Valor Cry. Miriel interprets this petal storm as an ill omen signaling that Valinor is displeased by her island's refusal to fight Sauron. She quickly changes her mind. Why Isildur quits. Maxim Baldry's Isildur undergoes a career roller coaster in the Rings of Power Episode 4. Gently pushed into the Númenórean Sea Guard by his father, Isildur has other ideas about his future, and his heart is instead set upon the west, the real Númenor. Instead of simply quitting, the budding sailor sees a light and hears a voice coming from the west and chooses to deliberately sabotage his duties in the hope of getting dismissed. The youngster likely believed accidentally on purpose getting fired would provoke a less angry reaction from his dad than outright quitting. But if Isildur's plan is to abandon the seas and go west where the skies are blue, why does he then join Galadriel's army headed for Middle-earth? To the east, Isildur's friend mentions how Anarion once spoke of the West with reverence. His entire family belonged to the faithful, Númenóreans loyal to the Valor, and Isildur's western aspirations are probably born from a desire to discover his destiny and connect with a glorious past Númenor's rulers have since abandoned. Respecting the Valor, befriending the elves, etc. Middle-earth lies east, but helping Galadriel defeat Sauron honors this goal. What Miriel's Númenor vision means. The Rings of Power Episode 4 reveals Númenor's ruling line harbors a dark secret, a prophecy telling of the island's destruction told by a Palantir. Queen Regent Miriel both witness a vision of violent waves rushing over Númenor's cities, swallowing the whole kingdom into the sea. This dream is a very close visual representation of how J.R.R. Tolkien described Númenor's downfall toward the end of his Second Age mythology. Plenty of big events must transpire before Númenor goes swimming. But the Rings of Power Episode 4's dream sequence not only makes the cataclysm inevitable, the day might now be much closer than audiences probably would have assumed when Númenor first debuted in the Rings of Power. How is Adar connected to Sauron? The Rings of Power Episode 4 finally reveals Season 1's Big Bad, Adar. Though the Orc Father remains highly enigmatic, his conversation with Arondir drops a string of salient details. The Rings of Power implies Adar is an elf, evidenced by his language, ears, and memories of Beleriand. But the Great Wave also confirms Maul, for the moment, at least, is not portraying Sauron. Nevertheless, these two Middle-earth baddies are evidently connected somehow. Adar is a follower of Morgoth, but whether he's a survivor from the War of Wrath or he converted during the Centuries of Peace remains to be seen. Adar also has no obvious special ability, although his line about not being a god yet teases a nefarious plan to obtain greater power, potentially where Theo's mysterious black sword hilt comes into play. Adar's ultimate goal is less likely to be personal domination over Middle-earth, and more likely to be setting the stage for Sauron's return. This could explain why his focus rests on the Southlands, which sits exactly where Mordor is located in The Lord of the Rings. The Rings of Power throws a shroud of mystery over Adar's father title too. Arondir questions the name, but receives no reply. Orcs were originally created from captured elves, so if Adar is elven in origin, he might have bred his soldiers in the Rings of Power personally, hence the daddy title. What's going on between Waldreg, Theo and the Black Sword hilt? Adar apparently isn't the only Morgoth fan in the Rings of Power. Waldreg, the friendly Turharad tavern owner, takes an increasing interest in Theo's youthful rage during the Great Wave, eventually revealing that he knows the boy stole a strange black sword hilt from his barn. Instead of chastising Theo for swiping his property, Waldreg is strangely encouraging of Theo's curiosity, asking the lad if he's ever heard of Sauron and suggesting they prepare for the drama to come. The Rings of Power suggests Waldreg is secretly a villain. The Southlanders were historically soldiers of Morgoth, and though most residents no longer remember or care for those days, it's no great surprise that one or two lineages retain an evil streak. That'd certainly explain why Waldreg kept the black sword hilt all this time, a keepsake passed down from one dark soul to another, and now the tavern grouch is hoping Theo will follow suit. The sword hilt's purpose remains ambiguous, but given how badly Adar is hunting for it, the relic could either afford the Orc Father great mystical power or facilitate Sauron's return to Middle-earth.